I apologize in advance for my can voice, which comes from screaming pleasantries at people until about 3 o'clock in the morning. So, listen, it's great to be here. I know many of you out there share my pride in being part of a holding company, and I should really see the holding company that has put women on the agenda. And put women in advertising on the agenda, women in marketing services on the agenda, women in the workplace on the agenda, and mostly women in the world on the agenda. And for me, that's truly important. I hope for you it truly is. And by virtue of your numbers, I can see it is. IPG's commitment to women is evidenced really across the board. If you look at the board of directors, it's among the most gender diverse boards in the corporate world. And it's evidenced by IPG's commitment to the Women's Leadership Network. You can see the oeuvre of the Women's Leadership Network, we say that in Cannes, right here in this room. And far beyond this room, where events like this happen across our organizations around the world. The WLN is truly a galvanizing force for women in our organization. So Michael said that this all began in 2011, right? So it's kind of an anniversary of sorts for some of us. We were here, I guess that's about 4 years ago. And we did a panel, as Michael said, we were focused, interpublic, and Michael wanted to put a stake in the ground around the issue of women in creativity. For those of you, many of you know these stats. It's a very sad stat, actually. It was sadder 4 years ago. And the stat is that there are, at the time, 3% of women, 3% of creatives in the advertising industry were women. So that's a pretty sad stat. So we came here, we had a breakfast like this, and we did a panel on the main stage, and it featured a number of women in the corporate world. I was fortunate to be included. Michael did a mellifluous introduction. Soledad O'Brien moderated, and the star was Martha Stewart. And so Soledad said to Martha, you know, women in creativity, it seems there's very few of them in advertising. Like, what do you think? And Martha was incredulous. I mean, she couldn't believe that there were no women in creativity in her world. Her world was all women. If she needed a creative solution, she went to a woman. Those were the only people who worked for her, actually. So the whole thing was quite shocking. So our job has become to move a little bit towards Martha's world. Who among us doesn't want to move a little bit more towards Martha's world? So the good news, I think, is that we have made a difference. I mean, are we there yet? I mean, some of you have probably seen the White House did a campaign saying we're not there, and we aren't there. I mean, the White House is sometimes correct. So we aren't there, but we are making progress. So credit to IPG, credit actually to the Cannes Lions. I'm going to introduce Senta Slingerland in just a second. But progress is being made. So I have brought with me, I think it's behind me, some stats, right? Because one goes nowhere without PowerPoint, ever. So, and so here's some stats just for you to look at. This year, there are 32% female jurors here at Cannes Lions. You may say to yourself, 50% of women in the world, 32% jurors, I'm not sure that's great. But it is great because there were 20% only 2 years ago. So a great deal of credit to the Lions there. There are 5 jury presidents. One of them will be with us, one from FCB. I believe Joanna Montero is going to be here a little bit later, headed up the mobile jury. So 5 female jury presidents is terrific. It wasn't that way 4 years ago when we were here in 2011. Here's the stat, that whole 3% thing that we talked about. 4 years ago, 3% of women in creative roles in advertising. It is now 11%. Okay, it's not perfect, but it is moving in the right direction. I should say there is a conference, and I don't know if Kat Gordon is here, the 3%. Hello, Kat. And Kat started a few years ago a conference to really focus on women in creativity. I know Michael has played a role there, IPG has played a role there, and Kat's doing a good job, and now she has to change the name of her conference because it's now 11% of women in creative roles. So better. Okay. Last slide. I have spent, and many of you in this room have probably spent a couple decades trying to shatter glass, break glass, whatever. That's what we're supposed to do, and we do it. God knows we do it. But now for the first time, we are embracing glass. And we're embracing glass because for the first time ever, and this is history making, the Lions have created the Glass Lion. It's a lion for change, and it is a lion that is about defying gender stereotype, prejudice, and bias, and looking for work that does that, and elevating and celebrating the work that does that. So a crusader for the Glass Lion is Senta Slingerland. She is the director of brand strategy for the Cannes Lions. She is a huge believer in the Glass Lion and a huge believer of the power of women in the industry, and she's over here. I'm going to invite her to come up. All right, so we're going to move to the talk show set now, because that's what they've told us to do, and we're going to sit and we're going to have a talk show format thing. Okay, so Senta. Here's where I ask the question. So,
Is this on?
you ready?
Is this on?
Yes, okay, Senta. I am told there are 14,000 delegates here at the Cannes Lions this year. That's a lot of people. If you wake up and you wander down La Croisette, it looks like this moving sea of testosterone. I mean, that's what it looks like to me. It must have been hard to conceive, develop, and get the Glass Lion to happen. So how did it happen?
It was actually in some ways not as hard as you think, because the world was calling for it and marketers were calling for it. And everything we do at Cannes Lions is through a very specific lens, which is lens of furthering creativity. We like to see ourselves as campaigners for creativity, right? Because we believe that creativity is the driving force for business and for change, and sometimes for good as well. And that we also believe that you can only get to the best creative world in the work if you diversify your talent pool. And that's gender, but that can also be social background, that can be skill set. So it kind of, doing something around talent and diversity was kind of obvious. And clients, as I said, were really calling out for it as well. But deciding to do something and then actually launching something and really amplifying it, that was a slightly harder bit. We always go to our community and make sure that we get input from the whole community. So people were very excited about the Glass Lion kind of from the start. In terms of how it was built, last year I launched an initiative called See It, Be It, which is an initiative to try and address the lack of female creatives in agencies, as you were explaining before. So what we do is we get nominations from agencies all over the world to put a woman forward who's in a creative job role and who's at the level of her career where she's not quite a creative director yet, but she's probably been working about 7-8 years, and we feel like that is the level of in a woman's career where she tends to drop out of the advertising industry altogether. So we invite 12 women over to Cannes, we cover their flights and accommodation and all that stuff, and we give them a program that nobody gets to have. We introduce them to VIP speakers, give them mentorship, give them tours of the jury room and all of that kind of stuff. Sheryl Sandberg was one of the people that the women met last year, and she came to us with the idea of the Glass Lion, and that's kind of how it launched. So if you have somebody like Sheryl Sandberg behind it,
it's a good advocate.
you know, it helps.
Yeah.
It helps. So,
how'd you feel about the first year of the Glass Lion?
Very, very good, actually. A lot of people here today were telling me that it was kind of talk of the town last night. The press around has been great. Trending, exactly. So very good, and I think the work that came out was inspiring and very diverse. But what do you think? Because you're in the judging panel.
I was very lucky. I was one of the jurors, and it was quite interesting. This year there were 166 entries, some truly fantastic work. I think some of you who went to the awards last night, I don't know how many of you did, saw Cindy Gallup, impressive jury president, talk about the winner. But we thought long and hard about what we needed to do to award the right work, but also about the sort of mantle we wore and the need to make some history with how we awarded that work. And for those of you who weren't there and who haven't been on Twitter all morning, the winner was a campaign called Touch the Pickle. It is work actually done by Saatchi in India, for Procter & Gamble's Whisper feminine protection brand, there is, and this is probably a TMI on a huge, huge, huge grand scale, but there is a taboo. One hesitates to say old wives' tale in a room like this, but there is a taboo in India that a menstruating woman should not touch the jar of pickle that's in every Indian family's kitchen, because if she were to touch it, the pickle becomes sour. So the campaign is all about liberating menstruating women to touch the pickle. And there is, it is a great multi-channel campaign. It involved Bollywood, it involved celebrities, it involved a huge amount of social work and crusaders. One woman stood up and just said, "Imagine the power of an army of menstruating women." And I had never thought about that before, and maybe you hadn't either. But in the end, and it was, combative is the wrong word, but the jury went back and forth on the issue. And in the end, the decision was, if we can touch a taboo, if we can change a taboo, and truly it's one that's been embedded so deeply into culture, and in fact embolden and empower young women, then we're doing something right. And that's hence that lion is the first glass lion ever to be given out. So Senta, it has been said that the goal here is to make CFB a terrific program and to make the glass lion obsolete, ultimately. Do you believe that that's the goal? And if so, when will it happen?
So in its first year, the glass lion is focusing on gender stereotypes and shattering those, and we wanted to make sure that in year one, the goals were very clearly set, and I think you and the jury really did that. In the future, the glass lion might grow to expand to include other types of representation. I think it's very much, it's called the line for change, and change happens in a moment, right? So it's very much the line of a moment. If it is obsolete at some point, I think we're always going to have issues around how people are represented and see themselves, and we have a chance to change that. Maybe the gender side of things will just not be necessary soon, as it won't be necessary to mention that there's 32% female jurors or 5%, the 5 jury presidents. So.
Well, I think on behalf of all of us, thank you. Thank you for the Lion of Change. Hopefully next year we'll be here and it'll be, 45% women in creative roles in advertising and 50% jurors. I mean, if nothing else, 50% jurors. But thank you. I am now going to introduce Marcy Samet, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of MRM McCann, because there's a lot of really great women in technology who are going to come up and talk to you about their lives. So thank you.